Chapter 157. Shizun. On my wedding night back then, I actually... Moran produced a delicate bracelet, sparkling with beads made from East Sea nacre and She-Hill sunstone from Churang Peak. That it was an item of luxury was obvious at first glance. In your letter you asked me for the Carp Spirit's lunar crystal. Unfortunately, my cousin has already used it to refine a sword. I didn't prepare any other gift, but I bought this water and fire crystal bracelet for you. It should suit you perfectly.
This is much too valuable. Chutong can't possibly accept it.
Surely there's no reason to refuse a gift of congratulations.
Moran chuckled.
What's more, this bracelet has a restraining effect on fire elemental spiritual energy, but it's only suited for ladies. If you wear it at Nangonggong's side in the future, it should also moderate his spiritual power. It's a useful little item.
Song Chutong turned her head to look at Nanggongzi. After receiving his nod of approval, she took the bracelet in both hands and bowed deferentially. Many thanks, Mo Tsangche,
she said warmly.
The four drank their tea and chatted a while.
Wanning, by now quite invested in Nanggongzi's big day, reminded him to take care with the wedding preparations and make sure every detail was in place. He wouldn't want anything to go awry at the last moment. Nanggongzi gulped his tea and tossed the empty cup idly in his hand. Songsha, don't worry. I make sure to check up on things every night. He grinned. I'm grown now. I know where my responsibilities lie. Actually, just last night I found that Chutong's dress robes were missing a pearl and got someone to fix it right away. When he spoke of the wedding, a touch of shyness crept over his carefree face. He glanced over at Song Chutong and smiled. Chutong will look gorgeous when the time comes. These words fell on the ears of Song Chutong's husband from a past life. Moran absent-mindedly poured himself a new cup of tea. Of course he knew that Song Chutong was exceptionally lovely, a peerless beauty, but so what? Back then, in a ceremony at Dawning Peak, Taxianjun had married the first empress of the cultivation world. Phoenix-patterned candles had burned bright on the night of the great wedding, but Moran didn't spend it in the bridal chamber. He'd had too much to drink that evening. Amidst the hazy glow of the red candles and the blur of wedding veils, he tilted up his new bride's flushed, bashful face and stared down into it. It was common, on important milestones, for people to feel regret. The passage of time washed over them, and they realized the world had changed before their eyes. Even this man, who styled himself Taxianjun, was no exception. He felt suddenly that nothing was real. His gaze seemed to pierce the charming mist of scarlet around him and fix upon a wind-blown snowy sky from many years ago, when he had only rags to protect him from those freezing winds, when he had been on the brink of death from thirst and starvation, and someone had taken pity on him, had held out rice porridge for him to lap up. When he'd first arrived at Xisheng Peak, anxious and scared, when he'd stood on tiptoe to pluck that haitang blossom beneath the round-bellied moon, when he'd knelt before Wanning, the willow vine striking down on his body, had he ever imagined that one day he'd trample upon the world's cultivators and rule all under the sun?
Husband, what are you thinking about?
His bride's vermilion lips parted, and her gaze lingered upon him. Even her exhalations were cloyingly sweet, as sweet as the position to which he'd ascended today. He seemed to have everything, a beauty, status, power. What was left for him to be displeased about? He couldn't name a single thing. Yet he felt hollow, as though he stood at the chilly summit before a sea of downturned faces, all murky and indistinct. He pushed his way through these simpering figures as they showered praise and admiration upon him, as they prostrated and fawned, their faces indistinguishable from each other. A voice charmingly called out to him, tender as the petals of a peony.
husband, my husband. He felt disgusted. He wanted to flee those surging waves of sycophants, but the saccharine sound of that voice wound around him like syrup. Without warning, he shoved Song Chutong away. His lovely new bride was no match for this rough treatment. She crumpled onto the bed, spangled with dragons and phoenixes, in the scarlet bridal chamber, gold and silver ornaments jingling in her hair. Trapped in this mirage of glittering jewels, Moran found everything distorted, unreal. That shimmering golden glow was like hellish fire, that brilliant crimson candle like tears of blood. He felt repulsed, but he didn't know who repulsed him. Was it Song Chutong, or was it this version of himself who had changed beyond recognition? He bolted out the door. In the last lifetime, this was something known to precious few, that on the day of Ta Xianjun's great wedding, the Empress Song Chutong was abandoned in the bridal chamber as Moran, clad head to toe in gold and red, pushed open the door to the Red Lotus Pavilion. Song Chutong's groom walked in, and after a time the candles in the pavilion went out. He stayed the whole night through. Only at dusk on the second day, when Xue Meng charged up Xisheng Peak to make trouble, did Moran languidly open the door, straighten his disarranged clothes, and saunter over to the main hall, his face suffused with a sinful satisfaction. Nobody beyond the walls of the Red Lotus Pavilion would ever know what transpired that night. After bidding farewell to Nangongxi and Song Chutong, Wanning and Moran returned to the guest courtyard side by side. Voice carefully neutral, Wanning spoke up. Just now when Nangong said Song Chutong was beautiful, why did you space out staring at her like that? I was thinking how she'd look in wedding robes, said Moran. Wanning was suddenly washed by a wave of jealousy. He shook out his sleeves and said, icy, Preposterous. Who told you to concern yourself with someone else's bride? Moran laughed. Who said I'm concerning myself with her? I was just thinking that no matter how she looks in wedding robes, she wouldn't look half as wonderful as Shizun did. Wanning couldn't muster a reply. He'd been prepared to vent a belly full of anger, but instead a little wolf pup had licked his palm, catching him off guard. His face went white, then red, and he couldn't get a word out for several long seconds. At last, he waved his sleeve and snapped, Don't mention that ridiculous ghost ceremony ever again. Moran sighed to himself. It's not like I brought it up. You're the one who asked. I don't want to lie to you. When I tell you how good you look, you turn all your fierceness on me. But even when you're fierce, it feels sweet. When I think of how I lost you, Wanning, you could reprimand me with all your might for a lifetime, and it would still be like soaking in a jar of sugar. What can I do? I can't help but long for you. Time flew swiftly by, and soon it was the eve of Nangongxi's wedding. Rufeng's sect was teeming with guests who'd traveled from all over. Leaders and young masters from the major sects, wandering cultivators of the Jianghu, and even some business moguls with no spiritual abilities whatsoever. All those who had waited until now to arrive crowded at the gates of the host city. Carriages and horses wove in and out of the throng, their canopies billowing like clouds. An endless stream of men and women, decked out head to toe in finery, drifted into the city, until Rufeng sect's main avenue resembled the flowing silver river of the Milky Way, with the light glinting off of their silks and jewels. Xue Meng's father had hauled him into the city to meet a lady cultivator around his own age. Wang Jianjun, long time no see. A pleasure indeed. Has this little mantua? She's all grown up now. How pretty. Come, Xue Meng, come here, and give your regards to Wang Bobo.
Xue Meng reluctantly sidled over.
Hello, Wang Dabo, he blurted.
Chu Chengyong smacked him upside the head. He kept smiling as he muttered through gritted teeth.
It's Wang Bobo, not Wang Dabo.
It's fine, it's all the same. The darling of the heavens is handsome as expected. The spitting image of you, old Xue. Lucky man. After more of the same, Xue Meng was coerced into taking a stroll around the garden with little Mantu. Little Mantu was 16 this year, but so much for sweet 16. Her demeanor was decidedly icy. After walking side by side with Xue Meng for some time, she proclaimed, "Surely Xue Gongse understands what our elders intend by pushing us together like this." Allow me to be candid. I'll take a walk with you, but I don't care for your personality, Xue Gongse, so don't get any ideas.
Oh, wait, what?
Flabbergasted, Xue Meng stopped in his tracks, face ashen, and stared at little Mantu. The little coquette raised her chin and narrowed her eyes at Xue Meng, haughty and forbidding. "My heart is my own," she said coldly. "Even if you've fallen in love with me."
Are you crazy?
Xue Meng exploded.
Me?
He jabbed a finger at his own chest in disbelief.
Fall in love with you?
Why else would you be leading me down this little alleyway? Is it not because of your unsavory intentions?
Xue Meng's volatile temper flared. You should have told me your brain was full of holes.
Spitting in rage, eyes flashing, he couldn't help stammering.
I like you? I like you?
Why do you need to say you like me so many times? Pervert! Little Mantu was a principled young lady. She stamped her foot, lifted her head, and slapped Xue Meng soundly across the face. Xue Meng was so mad, the world was tilting. After being slapped by this delicate hand for no reason, he was ready to spit blood. Were it not for Madame Wang's repeated exhortations to let women have their way, he would likely have pushed the young woman to the ground and pummeled her black and blue. It was at just this moment that a man with pale eyes and a regal profile appeared at a distance. When little Manchu spied him, her mouth fell open in disbelief, and her eyes welled with tears. "Mei Gongse!" she coyly called, before pelting toward the man. This newcomer was Mei Hanshue, who clearly hadn't expected to run into anyone in such an obscure little alleyway. He was taken aback, and upon seeing little Manchu coming at him full tilt, raised a hand to defend himself. The girl, caught off guard, ran headlong into a hastily conjured lightning-laced barrier. With a screech of alarm, she crumpled to the ground. Mei Hanshue made no move to help her up. He looked down and furrowed his brow. "Miss, I'm afraid you have the wrong person." "Impossible! How can that be? You promised me a gold-spiced sachet as a token of your love. You said I'd be ever in your thoughts from the moment you first laid eyes on me. You said once I turned 18, you'd marry me. Did you forget?" Mei Hanshue eyed her, but did not deign to reply. "Mei Gongse?"
You really do have the wrong person.
Without another word, Mei Hanshue shook his head and strode away from the weeping girl. Watching the scene unfold, Xue Meng felt at once furious and vindicated. Furious over this dirty womanizer, Mei Hanshue, who would pretend he didn't recognize a girl the instant he pulled up his pants. No wonder this heartless villain only dared to walk along deserted back alleys during such an occasion. At the same time, he felt vindicated. So it turned out that little Manchu had her heart set on the scoundrel Mei Hanshue, who was precisely as his name implied, flowery and frigid. It was said this rogue had two faces. One he wore before he fooled around with a woman, and one after. Little Manchu would be doomed for 8 lifetimes if she'd fallen in love with him.
As Mei Hanshue strode toward Xue Meng, he narrowed his limpid eyes to cast Xue Meng a glance.
"What do you think you're looking at?"
Xue Meng thought.
"What's a jerk like you eyeing me for? You're famous for being a dirty player, while I'm famous for being a great warrior. I've got plenty more clout than the likes of you."
Xue Meng loftily raised his chin and glared sidelong at that jackass Mei Hanshue. He planned to huff in a very dignified and scornful manner the moment Mei Hanshue passed by. What he didn't anticipate was that Mei Hanshue would come to a halt before him and looked at him coolly.
"Why is your face so swollen?"
he asked.
"It's a rather unique look on you, to be sure."
Xue Meng had no time to stop the arrogant that came out like a runaway carriage. Mei Hanshue eyed him in the ensuing awkward silence. Xue Meng's cheeks immediately heated. He turned away and snapped.
"None of your business. I fell while I was walking."
"Be more careful when walking in the future," Mei Hanshue said calmly. "It's no small feat to come out of a fall with your face in that shape." With that, Mei Hanshue swept off, leaving Xue Meng rooted to the spot for several beats before he began to hop around in fury.
"Mei Hanshue, you son of a bitch! You stop right there! I get back at you or die trying!"
Bursting with indignation, the rims of his eyes bright red, Xue Meng dashed out in such a rush that he ran headlong into someone's chest.
"What the hell?"
Xue Meng cried, enraged.
"Watch it! Are you blind?"
He looked up and saw a tall, charismatically handsome man in green. The stranger's robes were embroidered with a gold polio motif, and his hair was bound up with a green jade ornamental crown of guyuye. His lowered gaze was framed by long, delicate lashes. As he looked up, his eyes seemed to hold within them the misty rains of Jiangnan, set in a face of arresting it could steal one's soul. The man shoved Xue Meng away and straightened his hair and robes. Irritation was scrawled on his face as he smoothed the creases in his collar with slender fingers. It was then that Xue Meng noticed the silver ring engraved with a Xuanwu tortoiseshell on his index finger. He stared blankly for a moment, then exclaimed, "Jiangxi?" The sect leader of Guyuye, the richest man under the sun, Jiangxi. Although Jiangxi was around the same age as Zhuo Chengyong, his method of cultivation left him looking like he was yet in his 20s. He was exceedingly wealthy and exceedingly beautiful, no doubt a darling of heaven favored by the gods. At the spiritual mountain competition, Jiangxi had been the only truancy among the leaders of the 10 great sects. Xue Meng had wondered back then what this absent man looked like. Now, confronted with his distinguished and opulent presence, Xue Meng gawked openly. Jiangxi's expression was steady, yet his temper was anything but.
"You dare call a sect leader by his given name? What a joke!"
Xue Meng felt 100 times more humiliated than he had with Mei Hanshue.
"What? Are people not allowed to call you by your name when you're old?"
he angrily blurted.
"Does everyone have to call you esteemed sect leader? Even Nangong Liu isn't as full as himself as you." "Insolent whelp!"
Jiangxi thundered.
"Whose disciple are you?" "Why should I answer to you? Who do you think you are? Guyuye might be a bunch of monkeys who listen to your orders, but do you think everyone will bend to your will so easily? There's no way I'd tell you. If you ask me, you're just a Menge."
An elegant voice called out. Xue Meng's mouth snapped shut as he stepped away from Jiangxi and cast a glance behind him. Madame Wang had come at some point. Perhaps she had overheard Xue Meng being insolent. She looked pale and nervous as she hurried to intercept her son.
"Menge, be quiet and come over here."
Xue Meng gave Jiangxi one more furious glare before shaking out his sleeves and walking over to Madame Wang.
He lowered his head deferentially. "Mom." Jiangqi was still for a moment. He slowly turned and narrowed his eyes. Despite their beauty, they flashed with a malevolent light, casting a detached look at the mother and son standing before the white walls and black tiles. His mouth moved in a derisive sneer. "Then this must be the darling of the heavens, Zhuo Chengyong's precious son, Xue Meng." Madame Wang remained silent. Jiangxi's lashes quivered, and he closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they brimmed with disdain. "Truly, Zhuo Chengyong's son, with that level of self-discipline. Who said you can insult my dad?"
Menge!
Madame Wang yanked Xue Meng back behind her before bowing formally to Jiangxi, her face pale.
My son Xue Meng is too headstrong. I beg Jiang Changmen for his forgiveness.
Jiang Changmen. Like a viper, Jiangxi savored these words in his mouth before slowly swallowing them. "It's no matter. He's half Shiji's blood, so given your seniority, I might consider him an adoptive nephew." "Who wants to be your adoptive nephew? Take a good look at your own ugly-ass face and go to hell."
Menge!
With a chilly laugh, Jiangxi stared at Xue Meng, then slowly shifted his gaze to Madame Wang. Lowering her eyes, Madame Wang said,
Sect leader, please don't joke around. I'm no longer a disciple of Gu Yuya. How could I be considered your senior?
After a long moment, Jiangxi nodded. "Very well." He continued, voice cold. Very well indeed. I've seen an old friend and her son today, and it's been a truly eye-opening experience. What a sordid place Xixing Peak must be. A perfectly fine white magnolia had been spattered in mud. Hearing Jiangxi insult his mother right to his face, Xue Meng's blood rushed to his head. He dashed forward heedlessly. "Jiangxi, shut the fuck up! I'm gonna rip your mouth in half!" Madame Wang, unable to hold him back, could only watch the situation spin further out of control. A brilliant firework burst noisily in mid-air, and the timekeeping drums boomed. The voice of Wu Feng Sect's master of ceremonies rang across the 72 cities with the aid of a sound-amplifying technique. "To all our esteemed guests, we kindly request the honor of your attendance at the welcome feast beginning this evening in Poetry Hall." Jiangxi cast Xue Meng one last frigid look. Then he flicked his sleeves and turned on his heel, departing in a huff of rage.